Hi everyone, my name is Haley Howe, the Educational Access Coordinator at MATV. Well, today we have a very special guest with us at MATV, and her name is Sue Buske. And first, let's welcome her all the way from California.
Yeah, hi.
So, how are you?
I'm well. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. So we're going to talk about something that's very important for MATV and also for the community of Malden with Sue. Sue is the consultant and also owner of the Buske Group, and she's going to tell us more about her background in just a second. But today we're going to talk about a very important issue that's going on in Malden with MATV and also the community, which is the cable franchise renewal process. And I'm not sure how many people actually know anything about this process. And even for me, who work at MATV, it was quite new to me because when I was hired, we already went through a process. So this is very new to me as well. And I'm sure a lot of people in the community are very curious about the process. So that's why we have Sue today, who is an expert definitely in this area, to tell us more about this process and also how we can best go through this process for Malden so MATV can the best serve our community as Malden's media center. So, well, maybe we'll start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your Buske Group and what you do and what you have done for the access centers in the country.
Well, I actually, today, my work over the last 15, 20 years has been involved in working with local governments and community media centers and organizations like MATV and do a lot of different things. We help with the franchise renewal process. We also do things about helping cities enforce their franchise agreements with companies like Comcast or Time Warner or Verizon. And then the other thing we do is we do a lot of is set up organizations and set up community media center and PEG access organizations, help them hire their executive directors, do strategic planning. And that's sort of, it's a kind of an interesting mix of sort of the sort of regulatory and legal sort of side of the business side of dealing with cable operators and the contracts with they and the cities, and then the real community organizing part of it, which is about media literacy and digital literacy and providing media tools for different people, all different kinds of people in the community. And that really kind of comes out of my background. I started many years ago running a facility just like MATV. I mean, in the dawn of time, all right, when there weren't very many of these around, I did this in Dubuque, Iowa. And then I moved and then I got involved with the fellowship program at NYU and kind of got kind of tuned up because I was a music teacher before that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so anyway, so that's sort of like what we do now, and kind of over the years I went from running organizations and community media centers and access centers like MATV to actually going over into sort of the business and management and legal side of it. So it's kind of an evolution.
I'm sure that combination of different backgrounds that you have and your experience with media centers like MATV is for sure helping a lot with you understanding this whole process and the whole access world. And that makes you the best person to go to when we need help with this process.
Well, what we try to do is sort of demystify the legal process, which is what the city's involved in right now, so the people in the community get it, okay? Because and it's something that only happens once every 10 years.
That's right.
So it's
Thank God.
yeah.
Not every year.
Yeah, no, it's too much work.
Yeah, it's a rather complicated process. As we said, you know, even for people who work in the access world, it's a little hard to understand all the aspects of this process. So, but I think for people who are not even involved too much with access centers, to best understand this process, what we're going through right now, is to maybe even understand first how MATV like access centers all over the country get their funding. And that's one of the first questions we get, you know, when people come in through the door, and even my friends and family, you know, oh, where do you guys get your funding? Do you get your funding through the city? So maybe we'll start with that to give people a little more background of this so we can understand the process a little better?
Well, essentially what happens is a cable company is using the streets to put their wires on, either on or under. They have to get permission from the city to do that. That's what the franchise is. And part of that franchise is negotiating what the community is going to get back, and so MATV's funding, just like funding for a lot of access centers in the country, comes from that relationship. The funding that funds MATV or Boston Neighborhood Network or CCTV in Cambridge, all these access centers right in the area, okay, all comes out of that relationship. So there's typically, in the case of Malden, there was originally money that came with the beginning of this franchise, which was in 2007, because it's due to expire in 2017. Okay,
just 1 year before I was hired.
So there was a certain amount of money that came up front for capital, and that helped put the building, acquire the building, and do the renovations and things like that. And then there's so much money that comes annually from the cable company to fund MATV. And it's a certain percentage of the gross revenues of the company that the company generates here in Malden. So that's kind of how the funding works.
So is it safe to say that this is to financially support access centers like MATV is the way that the cable companies get back to the community, you know?
Well, or another way of looking at it is really it's the rent. They are paying rent to use put their wires in the poles and stuff, and that rent should come back to some service for the community, and that's exactly what access is and what MATV is.
So it's a public rights of way.
Right, the streets where the wires go, and that's one of the things about the sort of anchor concept, why there are even franchises in Massachusetts. We actually call them license agreements. In the first place, is because the company just couldn't string their wires on the poles or dig in the ground and put the wires there just if they felt like it. They've actually got to get permission to do that, and the city's responsible for those rights of ways, and so they go to the city and get permission. And so at its core, that's what a franchise agreement is all about.
Yeah, so I think that explained very well how we get our funding. So hopefully people have a good understanding of that now. So now we can start talking about the process. So you mentioned that every 10 years we'll have to do this with the cable companies. Like in this case, for MATV, it's Comcast and Verizon? Okay, so every 10 years. And but we try to get the process started a little earlier than the 10 years is up.
Exactly,
because it's a long process that we have to do. There's a lot of preparation that we have to do. And right now, we are, MATV is starting to do a lot of things to best prepare us for this process. So there are a lot of things that we are trying to get the community involved to do with us. And a lot of people maybe have already seen flyers and invitations from MATV to go to these events or workshops, or what we call actually focus groups. So why are we trying to get that many people involved? Isn't it just MATV trying to renew the funding so we can operate? Why so many people in the community are involved?
Well, we need to back up, okay? And because the process and it's not really, technically, it's not MATV that goes through the process, it's the city. But here in Malden, because there is such a great relationship between the city and MATV, they're partners in this process. So MATV is kind of doing the front end, the public input process. And stepping back again, federal and state law says you have to do certain things. If a cable company says, hey, I want my franchise renewed, then you've got to do certain things. And those certain things start about actually 2.5 years before the franchise expires. Technically, they start that early. So with the franchise expiring in 2017, this process really started in 2015. And it really started with Ron Cox here going, we're going with renewal here. We got to get our act together. And so we approached the city, and the city and MATV talked. And what ended up happening is this sort of partnership in the renewal process. So federal law says you got to do a couple things. You got to, number one, review the contract to make sure the company has done what they were supposed to do under the existing franchise agreement, which, another word, you can call it a franchise, you can call it a license, you can call it a contract. It's all the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
Okay. So you got to see if they've done what they were supposed to do. And then you need to find out what the vision is for the future. Because remember, this franchise expires in 2017. That means the new one will go to 2027.
Oh my God.
So when you think about, if you think about...
When you do the math, it sounds so far away.
It does. But when you think about, you're actually doing a process here that's going to define the kind of video service, the quality of that service, the internet, the telephone, all of those services the company offers. Technically, the wires that all of that transfers on is only one wire. It's all on one wire. So yes, this is technically a renewal of the cable part, but it's really applying to everything else. So what we need to do then is say to the public, to the businesses, to schools, to parents, to youth groups, to community groups, how do you want to be able to use media to do what you do better? Not just today, but in 2027.
We need to have a vision
right.
down the road how,
right.
well, I mean, with the media world changing so much, I mean, we're not talking about 10 years, but things are changing every month.
Practically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, MATV has gone through so many different changes in technology, you know, equipment and all that stuff, and everything is changing so fast that we have to be best prepared for way down the road, 10 years. We have to. So you think to get the community involved, it helps us to understand what people's needs are and how we can serve these needs the best with what we can do.
Well, exactly, and so the second part of the process has to do with the public input, which is called needs assessment. So that's what's going on and what MATV is sort of in charge of. We're going to be doing a series of these community focus group meetings, and then there's going to be an online survey, and the purpose of those, and the reason why you get information from people in two different ways, okay, is number one, because when you get people in a room and getting to brainstorm around questions, there's a sort of flow of energy and information that you document. When you're filling out a survey, it's a little bit more sort of into weeds detailing, but we don't ask technical questions. These are all questions about community, okay? These are not, you don't have to be a technical expert, you don't have to even have been on a show here at MATV. We just want to know what you think is important with regard to what are the big issues in the community now. What are things that you're going to have to address, whether you're a human service organization or a government agency or a business, in the next 5 years. How would you like to use technology to help you do that? These are the kind of questions we brainstorm in the focus groups, and then and the kind of things that we ask you to respond to in the online survey. So yes, there'll be two different opportunities. One with the focus groups on March 1st and 2nd, and then the second with the online survey, which will open on March 1st, and it will stay open for about, I think we're figuring about 45 days.
45 days,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so that's a lot of time for people to go to it and do the
right,
survey.
and we want to have a lot of numbers. I mean, when I was here back in November, I said, so can we get 500 responses to the online survey? Can we get 200 people in these 4 focus group meetings? It's sort of a challenge, but we really want to get a lot of different people involved.
We have had a few events, workshops that happened already in the community, and it seems like we're getting a lot of people, which we think we're very lucky to be in a community that's so you know, we feel like we're very tight with the community, and we get a lot of support from different individuals and organizations, so we really appreciate their input in this process. And we think all this important information that we collect from these focus groups and events will help us a lot with meeting everyone's needs in the next 10 years in Malden. So what I have here is a flyer for our focus groups, and as we can see here, we have focus group schedules, and we broke it down to 4 different focus groups. So we have different organizations, different people with different needs to be in their own group. So we have the government one, so where we can have a lot of officials from the government and to talk about what they want. And we also have the arts and cultural media focus group. We also have the educational, so people from the schools. And the last one is the nonprofit, community groups. So I think this is very well organized. And this obviously we got the idea from you, and that's what you do with all the access centers in the country, and you find this is very
well. What we
useful.
found is when you bring people together who are sort of common interest and see each other in other meetings, they're more comfortable talking around each other. Okay, and so, and the important thing about the focus groups is we organize them by constituency group because it's a comfort zone sort of thing, and we feed people. Okay, people get food. All right,
good.
And there's prizes if you RSVP. You get a prize. But also, if you're interested in the schools and you can't come to the one for the schools, that's okay. Come to any of them. All right. So the idea is, all the focus groups are open to anybody who wants to come.
Anybody in the community.
Anybody who wants to come. It's just we sort of organize them by constituency for ease and comfort. But
I see.
You can come to anyone. Some places.
You can come to all of them.
Well,
right?
some places, some people do come to all of them. Okay, I think it would get pretty boring to me after a while. But but it's interesting. Several times now, I've had people come up to me afterwards and say, "Well, when I went to the first one, I learned this stuff." But when I went to the second one, because what we do with the focus groups is we sort of give some information up front, then we brainstorm some questions, and then we answer questions and have people do the survey. Well, some people have said, well, the first time they heard the information part, they got X. But when they came back and listened to it the second time, they heard things that they didn't hear the first time, understandably, because for most people, this is all new. So you know how it is. You listen to a piece of music and you're going, oh, you hear this the first time, but the second time you listen to it, you hear a little bit something more.
That's right.
So and that's why people come to more than one.
During the brainstorm session, I'm sure people bounced ideas, and that gives you more idea of what other groups are trying to do. So I think it's kind of fun,
actually. I mean,
sure,
and sometimes we'll get going, and it's like you're supposed to be X amount of length of time, and people just want to keep brainstorming. So as long as they don't kick us out of the building, we just brainstorm longer.
There you go. So actually, when I heard about all this as a staff member, I was first very a little surprised, because I thought we were just going to go ahead with the renewal process, just like lawyers will talk and, whoever will talk, and that's it. But after hearing what the process is and how we are getting the whole community involved in this process, I felt like this is a much better way, because it's not just getting the funding, it's understanding what MATV as an organization is about and what we are trying to do for Malden and how we can be the best, provide the best service to Malden. I mean, it's a process of us understanding MATV as well and planning out how our future would be for the next 10 years. I mean, I feel like that's amazing. We're getting funding, and we're also understanding us more than ever before, and the community is all involved. So this is the purpose of this whole process.
Well, and there's sort of and there's sort of several threads of it, really. Okay. One thread is dealing with all the sorts of things that we deal with community access and community media centers like MATV. And then another part of that thread is cable service getting to everybody in town? It should. Okay. When our first meeting I had back in November, there were people who said, well, cable didn't go by some of the areas in downtown. Well, I thought that the franchise said they were supposed to. So you learn all kinds of things like that. Then the other part of the other thread is, and this is the piece that for me in my work and sort of the history of my work, I think is as important as anything about this process. And that is, you take the energy and the time to do this right, which federal law says. You build a legal case in that manner for what the city's going to negotiate for, because it's not based on two people going to a room at City Hall and saying, let's do this.
Right.
It's actually based on community input.
Right.
But once you get the information from the focus groups and the online survey and the visioning, that becomes the core of a strategic plan for
Exactly.
MATV. You can take that information and you can say, okay, where are we going to go in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years as far as services to the community? So this process you need to do for the legal part, which is to be able to negotiate a new franchise, becomes an extremely valuable commodity to MATV and to all the people they serve and the city serves in the media arena, because you have a great resource and source. So when the needs assessment reports get written, I tell people, don't shove them on the shelf when you're done with renewal. Take that information and use it as a springboard for figuring out where you're going to go next.
Right. So that all that information we will get from this process is extremely valuable, even for MATV to grow even into our brighter future.
Exactly. And the other thing is it provides an opportunity to connect with new people and groups, and to reconnect with those that maybe MATV worked with 10 or 15 years ago, and somehow they're just not, the connection has been made again. So it's an opportunity to reconnect. So it's a real sort of re-envisioning and re-energizing for the next period of time.
Well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very excited about this process myself. You know, I'm very curious. I mean, I work with the schools all the time, so I'm definitely going to the school one, but I'm going to go to all of them. But I feel like during these process, I will get to understand more what the teachers and administrators and parents, students want to do, so I can better design my programs for them and get more of them involved. So I feel like this is a very good process, and we are off to a very good start with your help. So.
Well, and we want people to come to the focus groups, but you got to go to the MATV website and RSVP and tell us which session you want to come to.
Right. But as we said before, you are welcome. Everyone is welcome to as many as you want. So we will be very happy to see people who come to our focus groups, and we will definitely hear from you and take your input to our future design. Okay, so all that information is online, the time and the date, and I think we showed a flyer of all the focus group schedules, and when the surveys come out, we hope people will look for them and take a little time to do the survey and to provide us all the valuable information that we're looking forward to receive.
Cool.
So, well, I think we covered a lot of grounds, and I feel like we are understanding this process better as we go. We're learning more and more about MATV and the community, so we think this is going to be a very positive experience. And thank you so much for your help and guidance.
I love every minute of it. It's fun.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the couple of days of cold when you are here in Massachusetts.
So I can go back and be
to
warm.
California. Yeah. Jealous about that. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this session gave you a lot of information that you're curious about, and you're getting a better understanding of what this cable franchise renewal process for MATV, and we want your support, we want your input, so we can best serve our community as Malden's Media Center. Thank you very much. See you next time.